Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We, the team of Mural Lectures at IIT Madras, invite you for a fireside chat on the topic India, Vishwaguru, and beyond, a land of opportunities. I kindly request all of you to keep your phones on the silent mode. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Anand Ranganathan with us. As we all know, he is a faculty at the JNU. He specializes in the field of molecular biology, and he is also an intellectual. He obtained his BSc Honours degree from St. Stephen's in Delhi, and after that he went to University of Cambridge, UK for completion of his PhD. His work is in the field of directed evolution. He has been awarded the Young Scientist Medal of the Indian National Science Academy, as well as he is an Associate Fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences. In addition to his academic achievements, Dr. Ranganathan actively engages in a public discourse, delivering talks and participating in seminars on the topics ranging from politics to media and science. He is also an author of 5 books, and he regularly contributes in columns of News Laundry, Swarajya, DNA, Firstpost, and Quartz. He is also serving as a consulting editor of the Swarajya magazine. I would like to first invite our faculty advisor, Professor Basavaraj, to present Dr. Anand Ranganathan with the Angavastram. Now, starting with the fireside chat, I invite Dr. Anand Ranganathan onto the stage along with our moderators for the session, Bhargavi and Arjav. Now, I will pass the mic over to our moderators and Dr. Anand Ranganathan.
So, I'm audible to all. Yeah. Good evening to all and everyone present here. Thank you for joining us here for NML. And yeah, so let's begin with the fireside chat. First, before asking further questions, how you like the audience and how was the campus?
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure, not just to be in IIT Madras, but to be back in IIT Madras. Not many of you know that I am an alumni, albeit for a very short period in the early 90s, and my hostel was Jamuna Hostel. So if there are few from the Jamuna Hostel, absolutely fantastic. Of course, a lot might have changed in the last 32 years. We used to be for breakfast given an egg, and we would be asked to go into the kitchen to get it into the shape you want. It was like traveling to Dante's Inferno. Coming back with or without the egg was an exercise in its own right. But absolutely wonderful memories, and one of the most beautiful places in India is IIT Madras. So thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for the wonderful audience.
So good. So first question to you, sir. Like given your background in science and your parents as well as were scientists, and you work in the field of directed evolution and pathogenesis, and your achievements as an author, like what inspired your shift towards engaging political debates? How do you reconcile your scientific expertise with the often subjective nature of these discussions?
So what I like is he straight away jumped into the question and answer. No, that's how it should be. I've always had an interest in politics, but of course, being a student who was pursuing science, one doesn't get that much opportunities. But I've always had more than a passing interest, and I think it was possibly a natural inclination to know more about politics in this country and beyond. After all, what actually changes and forces change upon the world is not so much science as it is politics. But I have said this before, never mix politics with science, because then all you end up with is political science. which is great in its own right. Let me say this for many who would be offended, please don't. And incidentally, I'm sorry, I would have loved to speak in Tamil as well, but my Tamil is very limited. I only know the swear words. Um, and if I were to use Tamil, speak in Tamil, then you might mistake me for A Raja, so I don't want to do that. um, and I'm always invited only once to any place. So I'm very comfortable in that. Yes, about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, in fact, I was invited to talk about Indian politics and beyond. And I said, forget about castigating the Indian politicians. We've had that we do day and night. It's time to take the judges to task. And then I went on for the next 10 minutes to narrate the absolute crisis in judiciary. It's gone down the drain and is everything that is wrong in there, nepotism and collegium system and corruption and 50 million cases pending. And then I sat back and went back and I realized the person sitting next to me who had lit the lamp was the Chief Justice of Allahabad High Court. So I forgot where my car was parked. I ordered Uber and ran from there. So please be aware that I will be absolutely what I am, not just who I am, what I am. So I leave it to you to invite me again. But as an alumni, even if I'm not invited, I will come again. But to come back to the question, finally, pardon the rambling. As I said, I think science can be very exacting. The fruits of scientific labor are very few and far between. It can take, to write an article can take about 10 minutes. But to write a scientific paper and its content sometimes takes more than 2, 3 years, 4 years, if you're lucky. So I think I always found it important to kind of maybe straddle between two stools, and I've always believed that one should always aspire to be jack of all trades and master of none. Even in today's world, it is impossible to be an expert in anything. Even in the field in which you've gained prominence or quote-unquote expertise, things change so fast that for you to be called an expert in anything is almost become a joke now. So be a layman in everything, and that is what kind of kindles the curiosity. So, just to answer that, I started writing in 2010, publicly articles on various themes and topics, and I think I kind of enjoyed that. Away from science, I could switch on and switch off. And it wasn't, that I found that people who only do one thing, there is a tendency to get frustrated in that area. I've seen a lot of scientists who are frustrated. As I said, results are few and far between, and I've seen a hell of a lot of people who are non-scientists who are frustrated. So if you straddle between two stools, yes, there is danger of falling in between them, but it's great fun.
So politics is like violin for Einstein for you. If you, yeah.
Yeah, but please don't compare with me. Well, Lalu Prasad Yadav, yes, but not Einstein.
Okay, so coming to next question. So, you have identified as a free speech absolute in the past, and an approach has not seen a wider legal implementation. So, understanding the perils of big tech and big state, how do you substantiate the free speech absolutism in the space of disinformation, in which the attention economy and invent of AI makes verification less and less likely?
Yeah, I think to me, once the stomach is fed and you know where your next meal is coming from, the most important right is the right to free speech. And I think countries sooner or later discover it. Of course, as they progress, right to free speech is obviously secondary to your right to survival. And this phenomena is exploited by the politicians who thrust upon you that, look, let me first, you take care of your next meal, you take care of your family, you take care of your job, you take care of all the basic necessities of life, and then you come to criticizing us or talking about what is right, what is wrong. Leave that later on. But I think many nations who profess this have been destroyed along the line, sooner or later. It is inevitable that nations will progress towards free speech. And we have recent world history, or you can take world history of thousands of years, it has shown this, that those nations progress and develop who profess some kind of the other free speech. So, and it is ironical that the bastions of free speech, the so-called West, is now taking a U-turn, is now heavily into cancel culture, is now heavily into curbing free speech, which would be disastrous for it. I mean, just 2 days ago, Scotland has come up with a legislation that would imprison for 5 to 7 years if you were to negate recognition of pronouns or of transgenders. So J.K. Rowling is in a bit of a bother there, and that is the whole controversy, about. But the fact of the matter is that it is the most sacrosanct of rights. If you take that away, then what is left of a human being? If you're not able to say your mind, then you are an automaton, you're a robot. If you're happy being that, and millions are, be that as it may, it is unacceptable to me. And of course, free speech comes with 4 caveats, 4 commonsensical caveats, that you cannot, for example, free speech does not endow you the right to shout fire in this crowded theater, because that may endanger the life in a stampede of others. You cannot divulge state secrets in the name of free speech. Otherwise, a lot of Indian journalists might do that. Thirdly, you cannot incite a mob directly, to kill or to create havoc. And fourthly, there is a legislature, or there is a law of defamation. So as long as that is, so you can accuse me of being corrupt, it's fine. That is your right to free speech. After all, what is corruption? There is an abstract meaning of being corrupt in cash or kind. So this, but you cannot accuse me of taken 500 crores from Adani or Ambani. Then I'll sue you. So other than those 4 caveats, I think free speech is a must, especially when it comes to criticizing the government, the state, the nation, the state of the nation, and most importantly, religion. And I think going forward, these, more than being critical of the government, what I'm sadly seeing is that more and more the governments are stifling people being critical of religion. And that is unacceptable to, I'm not just saying this because I'm a Darwinian atheist, but it is a dogma, it is an ideology, it is an idea. Religion is an idea. And we are going back to the times of Galileo when he was asked to apologize. Do we want to do that? What happened to all the progress that we've made in the last 500 years? So I think that's absolutely draconian and unacceptable to me. That is the reason why I'm a free speech absolutist.
Next question. So again, the topic as suggests India, Vishwaguru and beyond. So there are many factors that play a crucial role in this. One of the factor is like us, students sitting here. So the question is like that. So it is, despite India being seen as a land of opportunities, many people still consider moving for various reasons. Factors like high taxes, strict rules on sending money abroad, and limited travel options with an Indian passport. Given Indian passport's rank is 82nd right now. And along with the appeal of a better life abroad, contribute to this. This term, also known as brain drain, and has attained significant attention across various platforms and by several individuals. So the brain drain term, like how and what are measures that we can that can reduce this thing, and after, like not just reducing, just eliminate it, and people should just stay back if possible and contribute to the nation.
Right. So I think one thing that we must realize now, especially the younger generation, is not to be tied to this phrase that was most often used in the 80s and 90s when we were growing up, brain drain, brain. I think there should be no such thing as brain drain. Scientists recognizes no boundaries, least of all national boundaries. And as Indians, we should be the first peoples to not recognize national boundaries, because after all, one of the greatest phrases ever, or you can say our greatest gift to humanity, is this magical phrase which is scientifically so accurate, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is a family. For a people who believe the world is a family, to talk about brain drain is, I would say, anachronistic, and it is contradictory. And let me explain that. I think science, the purpose of science is to benefit humanity. If the purpose of science becomes to benefit a nation, then it is a tool. And more often than not, it is a tool for warmongering. 99% of the help that has been rendered to Indians through science, let us accept it, for one reason or the other, we were poor, we're developing, is through the scientific advances that have been made by non-Indians. So we should be the last people to say that we should hold Indians back to India, or we should not, let people go. Ultimately, what matters is the idea that you generate. And as I said, science truly, it should not recognize any boundaries whatsoever. You want to take the example of COVID. The vaccine that has saved millions of Indians was developed by scientists in Oxford. And I want to come to that, because when we talk about Vishwaguru, what do we actually mean by India being a Vishwaguru? I think we should be a Vishwa student. A teacher who stops being a student stops being a teacher. And I think it's very important, rather than us to be didactic and teach the world, it is very important for us to be in a pool that learns from each other. And if we are going to do that, then most of our problems will be solved, if only we realize it. So to answer your question in a very limited way, I don't believe in brain drain at all. The evidence proves me right in the last 20, 30 years.
Thank you for that answer, sir. So coming to next question. How can India balance the preservation and promotion of its cultural diversity and heritage while also embracing modernization and globalization?
Right. So one thing we have to realize is our cultures the opposite of modern. What if your culture, what if your civilization is something that you can learn from in the modern age? What if your culture and your civilization was modern to begin with? What is modern? What is archaic? Is religion modern? Why are 99% of people in this world religious? The religious doctrine, is it modern? It's 3,000 years old, 2,000 years old, 1,300 years old. Whereas majority of the civilizational endowments that we have been blessed with are tremendously modern. I just gave you one example, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I mean, that outlook itself is just unbelievable, because science tells you it is the diversity that ultimately wins over. It is the the number of mutations that you generate. I mean, I'm talking purely at the biological level. The more you mix and mate, the more chances are there of your survival. So the more diverse you are, the more you will survive. And how do you become more diverse? By mixing more, by making the world a family. The more inclusive you are, the more you believe in othering, the more supremacist you are, the more you believe that your nation is the greatest, your ideology is the greatest, you exclude yourself. And you take any civilization, any nation that has done so, it has been destroyed. You know? So I believe in order to say, to answer your question, you have to define whether the civilization and the aspects of civilization that we imbibe are archaic to begin with. I would say it's a mix. Some of them we should be taking forward because they are tremendously modern and tremendously scientific.
Thanks a lot for your answer, sir. So, coming back to, the last question from my side was regarding brain drain. It is kind of follow-up and next question. We have seen Japan rise from nothing, you can say, after World War II. And it is believed that the phenomenal modernization would probably have been possible without the rivalistic spirit of Japanese nationalism. Considering the discourse around modernization, what role do you envision for de-coloniality in India's future trajectory? And how does de-coloniality influence or impact our society? And why is it significant in our context?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that I would like to devote 5 or 6 minutes to that because it encompasses a lot of disciplines. And there's a lot of fusion of various other ideas that would go into answering this question. I have written about this. I am against nationalism. I don't believe Indians are nationalists at all. The whole confusion started from the fact when somebody asked Narendra Modi and he said, yes, I am a Hindu and I'm a nationalist. We are not nationalists. We are patriots. There is a distinction between the two. We are not exclusivist. We are not supremacist. We are the most friendly of nations. We take in refugees. We trade with 196 countries. We are signatory to deals that are at the detriment to our own progress. Compare it to, for example, America, and you talk about the Paris climate deal. America reneged out of it, famously. To our detriment, that deal, because we are a developing economy, we need thermal power, we need coal power, and yet we are a proud signatory to that. Do you think people who believe our nation is the greatest and who are exclusivist would think like that? No. So one thing we have to get it in our psyche is that we are not believers in exclusivity. Ideologies are that. So communists, Islamists, a lot of religious people who believe in that, they believe in othering, they believe in supremacy, they believe in exclusivity. In fact, George Orwell has written about this, Catholicism, the whole aspect of that. Is this othering, exclusivist thing? We are anything but that. So we are not nationalists. That is, in my way of thinking, we are patriots. Your question was regarding development, and I think you took the example of Japan. Let me mix it with something, and as I began with saying that we might have confused ourselves as to what we are. It's not just that we as a people have confused ourselves. Our governments are confused. And I put it to you that India would have been where Japan is 30, 40 years ago, had we realized what is the role that every entity in India must do. Let me give you an example. What is the role of the government? Honestly, we still don't know. Yes. It's not just that we don't know, the governments don't know. The governments routinely infringe upon the roles that they are most ill-suited for, despite the fact that our leaders tell us that we are not going to infringe on there. For example, one of the things that endeared me to Narendra Modi was in 2013 when he said, a government has no business to be in business. I thought, here is a politician who's finally realized what is the role of the government. And he said it, government is not going to be in the business of running businesses. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, all what his government has done is to be in the business of businesses. He's repeated it 2017, 2019, 2022, without realizing that we now have even more public sector units now than we did in 2014, without realizing that 21% of our annual budgetary allocation of 45 lakh crores goes in propping up these public sector units. And I and a very young, brilliant, budding economist, Karan Bhasin, we took months with help to collate how many such public sector units there are, state and central. And it took us a lot of time because there is no central information deliberately where you can get this information, because they're all completely down and out. Most of them are loss-making. So why should the government tell you that they are loss-making if they are spending 21% of 45 lakh crores every year in it? There are 1,830 public sector units. 400 of them are non-functional, i.e. they're not making what they are supposed to make, and yet government is giving them thousands of crores. In fact, one famously, thankfully it closed down. I don't know how Narendra Modi gathered the courage to close it down, but 3 or 4 years ago, he did close down a public sector unit that was supposed to make chlorofluorocarbons that were banned in the late 80s. For the next 30 years after CFCs were banned, this public sector unit was taking thousands of crores from the government. There are 400 such units like that. You look at the state of our banks, tremendously loss-making, giving loans at the beck and call of politicians. What has changed? Congress was booted out because it believed in such things. But the new government, Narendra Modi, also believes in exactly the same thing. So what is the role of the government? And when we talk about, for example, NPAs, and this government says NPAs have been reduced, well, there is something called waiving off and writing off the loan. So you've written off 14 lakh crores, and then you're saying your books are fine now, they are easy to look at. It's not just a question of writing them off. How much of that have you recovered in the last 10 years? Barely 10%. The other 10 lakh odd crores is our money that has gone down the drain. When you have 400 PSUs that are leaching thousands of crores of our taxpayer money, and the government keeps on giving them money, is that not a confused state of mind? So that's point number one. Point number two is, what should be the role of the government? The Supreme Court said this, and this is one of the, going forward, the youngsters among you, I mean, not to exclude ourselves and those sitting in the front row. Sir, you with the beard, you look like a JNU undergraduate. So that's a compliment. No, the fact is, we as a country have to realize, the Supreme Court asked us to do this, define what is a freebie and what is welfarism. It asked the government to do it. We haven't done it. You know why? Because the last thing the politician wants is to define it. Because then he will be accused of indulging in freebies. I am not against a welfare state. I think a country like India needs to be a welfare state. Otherwise, we will wipe off tens of hundreds of millions of Indians off the map. We need health, education, food. During COVID, 80 crore people were provided ration for 3 years running. Had we not done it, millions would have died. But what people have to realize is that a welfare state or a socialist state is possible only in a capitalist state. Only capitalism. You need to generate money in order to then spend it. A socialist state cannot take care of welfare state. So again, there is confused thinking. This government, like every other past government before it, is a complete dyed-in-the-wool socialist state. It has not defined what is a freebie, what is welfarism. I'll give you 2 examples of what freebie is, because I myself have tried to define what welfarism is in my own small way, and I encourage everyone else to, because the Supreme Court asked us to define it. Politicians haven't defined it. So it is up to you, up to us, This is the most important question facing this country. If we don't define it, we are going down the drain without a hope or recourse. For me, freebie is something that is against national interest. It's a dole that is against. So appeasement, for example, is freebie. Recently in Telangana elections, the ruling dispensation that got booted out promised a Muslim-only IT park. That is pandering to appeasement. That is against national interest. The BJP in Nagaland promised the Christians who voted for it free trip to Jerusalem. Imagine BJP doing this. अयोध्या दूर की बात है, कह रहे हैं आपको जेरूसलम ले जाएंगे. You know, that is freebie. What right does a government have prospering on our taxpayers' money to send someone who votes for it on a pilgrimage? These are the things. For example, the Congress realized through the vision, certainly, of Dr. Manmohan Singh and Montek Singh Ahluwalia that this country cannot go on the pension scheme that it had. We will be bankrupt. So in 2005, the Congress junked the old pension scheme and it brought the new pension scheme. But you know what Rahul Gandhi did 2 years ago? Of course, he is more of an economist than Manmohan Singh. So what does Manmohan Singh know? Plus, he's a youth icon as well. He said, if you vote us to power in Himachal Pradesh, we will junk the new pension scheme that we brought. We will revert to the old pension scheme. He won. Congress won. And they junked their own scheme. And they brought on a scheme that is now leeching off 85% of Himachal Pradesh's tax revenue. People don't even know this. They are going to go bankrupt. And this is a domino effect. AAP was voted to power in Punjab. They resorted to old pension scheme. Maharashtra, when it came under the BJP and Shiv Sena rule, lakhs protested, went on a strike. They wanted old pension scheme. That is freebie. You are working against national interest. We don't have much time, but one of the biggest freebies given was the repeal of the farm laws by Narendra Modi. That is the most anti-national step any government has taken. So once we define what is a freebie, what is welfarism, I think this nation will progress. I end this by asking a show of hands. What, according to you, is the one policy in the last 75 years in India, Indian policy taken by any government, that has been proven to be the greatest benefit to businesses? Just one policy. Can you name one policy? One at a time. Yes, sir, you. Liberalization. Most people would say this. Anybody else? This would be, yes, sir. Make in India? Okay. Although I have a lot of things to say about Make in India. Yes, sir. Giving preference to education over food. All right. Okay. Ma'am? GST. Very good answer. Sir? Reduction of corporate tax, right? What scheme, sorry? PLI. What's the full form of PLI? Oh, okay, sorry. I'm very bad at acronyms, you know, and somebody says, Tina, there is no alternative. Then I said, there is something called Nita, Narendra is the alternative. Then Ambani, amazing Modi, building a new India. So Nita Ambani means Narendra is the alternative, amazing Modi building a new India. Nita Ambani is going to come back, basically. No, but so did you see something? When I talked about the one policy that has helped businesses most, all of you, without fail, talked about economic policy. All of you. Somebody talked about GST, you talked about liberalization, you talked about PLI, everybody else. And that is what every one of us has been programmed to do. There we go. Sir, could you stand up, please? A huge round of applause. The greatest policy, single most greatest policy developed by any politician around the world, living or dead, that has helped businesses is the midday meal scheme. And you know who got it? Kamaraj. He never even went to school. This is the greatness. Every day, 130 million Indian kids get educated, go to school. Why? Because they will study and they will get nutrition. This is exactly the job of the state. The job of the state is not to run businesses. The job of the state is to allow businesses to run using a productive labor force. How do you make a productive labor force? You make it educated, you make it well fed, you make it ready for challenges, you make it ready to combat any stress, medical, health-wise, or any other education. That is the job of the state is not to run businesses. That is where our confused thing comes in. That is why all of us, and I'm not blaming you because I was in the same boat as all of you, we think the most helpful policy that will help businesses would be a business-oriented policy. Wrong. We have 515 million labor force. 44% of it is involved in agriculture. 44%, almost 250, 300 million Indians, productive labor force, is involved in a sector that contributes only 14%, 14 to 14.5% to our GDP. From production to purchase, it is the most archaic set of rules that govern this sector. And yet, no politician before Modi had the guts to change it. And those 3 farm laws that he said would revolutionize this whole thing. In the West, 2 to 3% of the labor force is involved in agriculture. Out here, 95% of the farmers are not insured. 117,000 farmers have committed suicide. 84%, I can rattle off these figures. They will scare you even more and more, but what's the point? Those 3 farm laws were supposed to revolutionize this sector, much needed. 300 million Indians were involved in this. And what did the opposition do? They started calling it the black laws. They went on a dharna. They blocked highways for a year. Every day, the nation incurred a loss, economic loss of 3,000 crores for a whole year. But the saddest thing was that each one of those farm laws, verbatim, were in the manifestos of each one of these opposition parties. But because Modi brought it, they became black laws. How will the nation progress if we don't realize these simple things? That the job of a government is not to run businesses. It is to create an atmosphere. It is to create a labor force. So to cut a very, very long story short, my apologies. As a South Indian, of course, and a fan of PG Woodhouse, there's an anecdote that, Wooster and Jeeves, they're talking to someone and it goes on and on and on. And the other person is rattling off and he says, to cut a long story short, and, Bertie said, I walked away. So please don't walk away, my apologies. But the whole thing stems from the fact we are not yet developed because we are confused as to what our role should be. And when I say Vishwaguru and beyond, India right now is truly at an inflection point. Truly, it is bound to take off. But then we have been here before. That's the tragedy.
So coming to next question. Your work has often centered on discussing how institutional bias manifests itself in policies. With the current state of affairs in mind, how do we institute accountability or mitigation mechanisms such that systems disadvantage none of the Indians?
That's a great question again. I'm not just saying this to have favor from my fellow interviewees, but it truly is a great question, and I think it's a very pertinent question. And I said this before, talking largely of, you can say, abstract philosophical issues like what is defined the role. Let me take it to a political level, which is our opposition doesn't know what its role is. And I tell you, Modi is blessed. Truly blessed. with the kind of opposition that it has. In all the decisions that he takes for national interest, the opposition castigates him and outrages. And in all the decisions he takes against national interest, the opposition supports him. It's the perfect position to be in. He repealed the farm laws, the opposition supported it. He took back the Land Acquisition Act, the opposition supported it. He has done zero privatization other than Air India that has been going on for 30 years, the opposition supports it. He has done capital infusion of lakhs of crores in junk companies like telephony, BSNL, the opposition supports it. He continues with nationalized banks, the opposition supports it. All the pro-national decisions, I don't need to go into that, the opposition is against. So the opposition doesn't know what its role is. When the most prevailing phrase that we have in the current political climate is democracy is under threat, right? Democracy, oh my God, democracy is under threat, and kabhi bhi mar sakti hai democracy and all that stuff. My thing is, democracy has always been under threat ever since we became a democracy. It is because of the opposition, because of our constitution. As I say, we are a banana republic ever since we became a republic. Let's not beat about the bush. The constitution endows rights that the politicians and political parties exploit. So you end up blaming the politician. The politician, I'm following the constitution, and he's absolutely right. Take the issue of electoral bonds, anonymous electoral bonds. Yeah, they were anonymous, and they were struck down rightly so by the Supreme Court. Rightly so, and I was against it from the day one, because it's all very well for companies to give donations anonymously to any entity, of course. But then if that entity is asking for our vote, we have a right to know which company gave it money. To give an example, if a political party says, please vote for me, I will preserve this pristine forest or this area of IIT Madras, a beautiful ecosystem and this ecological zone, and we vote for it. The moment it comes to power, suddenly next day you find that a mining company has landed in IIT Madras and is mining the forest. And you say, why the hell did that happen? And you realize that anonymously that mining company had given thousands of crores to that political party. So it is in our right to know, because the political party is asking for our vote. So anonymity of electoral bonds was completely wrong and illegal, so Supreme Court struck it down. Now the opposition called it corrupt. Opposition said it should be struck down. Rightly so. Opposition said it is prospering those political parties who are neck deep in corruption. Rightly so. But then, why the hell did Congress take almost 2,000 crores from the same anonymous electoral bonds? If you believe a system is wrong, why are you using that same system? That's why, for a change, I admire the communists. It's just once in a lifetime opportunity for me to say so. The CPI said we will not use electoral bonds. The only party to have not done it. It's another matter, nobody was donating to them. That's another matter. But still, I admire it. It stood for the principle. Trinamool, castigating the anonymous electoral, 1600 crores it has taken. Aam Aadmi Party, देश को बदलने आए थे, 100 crores it has taken from it. So you are saying that the system is corrupt. At the same time, you are using that same corrupt system to prosper corruption. Is that not hypocrisy? So how is the opposition staving off or saving democracy? It is pushing democracy more in danger. I'll give you another example. And these are examples that nobody knows because nobody wants to talk about it, least of all the opposition. The BJP was convicted, not just castigated by the High Court, was convicted of violating the FCRA norms in taking illegal donation from a mining company. Conviction carried a prison sentence for the BJP head, whoever that was, not Nadda, but somebody else. Almost overnight, the next day, the BJP retrospectively amended the FCRA Act on the floor of the parliament, rendering the conviction toothless. Now, if something like this happens in a democracy, what do you think the opposition will do? It will come onto the streets in thousands. Chakka jam, ye anarchy, band karo, politician, hi, prime minister resign karo, president hatao. the whole nation will be neck deep in this until the opposition has forced the government to resign, the Prime Minister to be behind bars. Did you see any of that in 2015? Not a whimper. Many of you, like me, did not even know this fact. You know why? Because the High Court had also convicted the Congress of the same offence. Because if the BJP was able to retrospectively amend the FCRA Act, going back to the era of emergency, the Congress voted for it. This is how you will save democracy. So that's the problem. The onus of saving democracy has been put on citizens. Citizens can't do it. You can at most talk about it. The onus is on Supreme Court. Supreme Court does it in fits and starts. Supreme Court itself is confused about what its job should be. And I'm saying it now because I've been saved of contempt of court. J. Sai saved me, so... Thank you, J. Sai. Otherwise, I would have been like Arvind Kejriwal behind bars. With my poster in between Bhagat Singh and Ambedkar. So, who is to save democracy? I don't have an answer. I'm sorry to be despondent on this, but what is the recourse? Now, another thing that is going on right now, rightly so, is the BJP is using its investigative agencies as recovery agents and as, in a very draconian way. Absolutely true. It is true. And I was the first one to say this. I have made so many enemies amongst my own right wing. I don't know what to say. They say, "Seh lenge isko thoda sa keh raha hai." Because the Supreme Court rightly called the CBI and ED as caged parrot during the UPA. I said the parrot has remained the same, just the shoulder has changed. Now the shoulder is of Modi. 95% of all the politicians who are being investigated by these agencies belong to the opposition. Obviously, there is selectivity, obviously. Now, the Supreme Court made the anonymous electoral bonds illegal. Did it not? Because it felt something wrong was happening. Please tell me, why has the Supreme Court not made the non-independence of these agencies as illegal? Whose fault is it? The politician will say, the government will say, well, is it illegal that the CBIs and EDs are under us? It's a different matter that the late Mr. Jaitley had vowed that if BJP comes to power in 2014, it will make the CBI and the ED independent. It didn't. In fact, there's a very famous Rajya Sabha speech that the late Mr. Jaitley made, 7-point agenda to make CBI independent. They came to power and all that is forgotten. But isn't there Supreme Court, the job of Supreme Court, to see this is happening, this is wrong, make it independent, declare them their dependence illegal? Why hasn't it done so? So whose fault is, who is confused? So as long as these things happen, I'm not a big votary for change from the bottom up. We are talking amongst 1,000 people, The change has to happen amongst 1 billion people. That is to happen through the governments. Unless that happens, there is very little hope.
Thank you for your answer. And there are so many terms. So,
now we are opening the mic for audience questions. So because of the constraints, we will just limit the number of questions to 4. And apart from that, there is a request to all. After this, please don't record any of the part of the lecture. It is the copyright of EML IIT Madras, and don't upload it as it is completely on the YouTube.
This comes under free speech absolutism, so I'm fine with it.
Thank you so much for the amazing talk, sir. I'm a big fan of you, and forgive me if I stutter or forget my words because of my excitement. So my question was triggered by my friend mentioning our ranking in the passport index, like we're 84th or 86th. There are other indexes like hunger index, poverty index, happiness index.
Yes. Pakistan and Palestine are above
Bangladesh are above us. So my question is, how should we hit back to these European countries ranking us so rock bottom? Like, should we come up with our own ranking indexes, or should we try to increase? We have NIRF for college ranking, for example.
Right.
So what should be our hit back to it? That's my
We
question.
should all migrate to Gaza and to Islamabad.
Should we stop caring about it?
Venezuela is, by the way, ranked 76. We are 126, so we should all go to Venezuela. No, but you see, how can you stop this? You can't. As I say, in science, there is one condition of science and one obligation upon a scientist is never to repeat a failed experiment. You will be called a fool if you do it. Very few, if at all, any scientist repeats a failed experiment. And very few, if at all, a politician never repeats a failed experiment. Always, we revel in politics in repeating failed experiments. You can't stop it. That's the nature of the beast. Now, everyone knows through evidence, through experimental evidence, that whichever nation has espoused communism has been destroyed, down to its threadbare. And yet we have communists, especially in JNU. When you know an ideology is going to destroy you, make you hollow economically, mentally, physically, in every which way, and still you espouse it, is the reaction to that to ban it? Certainly not. Let it be. Let there be these indexes. Ultimately what matters is your happiness and your contentment. So we have to be aware about what our job is. And certainly 350 million Indians right now living on 60 rupees a day. If you believe that is an element of happiness, I leave it to you, but I certainly don't. I don't. So we are not a happy nation, but then what are these rankings? They are esoteric, they're abstract. Who is happy, who isn't? Do you feel Adani was happy a year ago? Fellow was ready to jump off the ledge. And I'm talking of Adani, you can imagine. So what is happiness, what isn't? That's a totally different matter altogether. I mean, as a Darwinian atheist, I believe life is totally meaningless, has no purpose at all. You derive as much contentment out of sorrow as you do out of happiness. And one of the most profound philosophical statements ever made has been by Camus, who said the only philosophical problem remaining right now is that of suicide. Why don't we commit suicide? Please read his Myth of Sisyphus. We are all Sisyphuses. All we do every day is push a stone up a hill and then watch it tumble down. And then we repeat it next day. We are condemned to do it. So what brings happiness? And Camus gave an answer, and I'm not too sure of that. He said, Sisyphus must derive happiness from his struggle. That is what his reasoning was. I'm not too sure of that, And the advance of biology in the last 30, 40 years, maybe 50 years, starting from Stanley Miller's experiment, where he replicated the early Earth atmosphere and he found out that the basic building blocks were constructed miraculously. We are a result of pure chance, to Jacques Jostak, who built this proto-cell that said even without genetic duplication, you can have cells dividing, to I forget the name, sexual PCR, William Stemmer, who said mutations are accumulated within a period of seconds for you to survive, to genome sequencing. There really is, completely meaningless, devoid of any purpose, this existence. The same as any animal, the same as a plant, the same as E. coli. So ultimately, nothing matters. You just hear very fleetingly. If we did not learn this from the COVID pandemic, I'm sorry to be so despondent, almost as if jumping off the ledge, but that is what I believe. COVID taught us this, The most successful people just died, stumbled. Why? Because something happened that they weren't ready for. People saw death and escaped. People saw death and succumbed. This is what life is so fleeting, So to cut a very long story short, don't believe in these indexes.
Good evening, sir. My question is, we have heard J. Sai Deepak sir say that the India can't be a secular country. What's your viewpoint on it?
India is not secular. I want India to be secular. It might be that J-Sai doesn't want India to be secular. That is his prerogative. But so our preamble has this word secular that was ironically inserted by Indira Gandhi during the emergency. It was absent from Ambedkar's constitution. Of course, I believe, personally, I believe we should be secular. What is the definition of secularism? It is that there is 100% distinction, separation between the church and state. That means religion and state. The state cannot indulge in any religious activity, and vice versa. Do you think we are that? When the state controls 100,000 Hindu temples, how are we secular? When the state pays the salaries of Maulvis and priests, when the state has Hajj subsidies, when the state has a ministry for minorities that gives interest-free loans to Waqf board for it to set up shops in its properties, how are we secular? So when we ourselves are not secular, we ourselves are confused about what the definition of secularism is. We are not a secular state. I would like us to be secular state, but we are plural state. But for some odd reason, we don't like the word plural. We prefer the word secular, so we are secular. No, I don't think we are secular in spirit. I think, well, it's contentious. I mean, what you mean to say, I got it, because what you're saying is we are secular because we are a Hindu by this thing. Yeah, so I got what you meant. But do you consider Hinduism as 100% religion? I don't. I believe the religious aspects of Hinduism are an offshoot of a way of life. In Islam, the way of life is an offshoot of religion. It's totally the other way around. So one aspect is amenable to change because ways of life change. So what you might consider today as religious as a Hindu might be different tomorrow because it is an offshoot of a way of life, and ways of life change. So we are all accepting. We do not condemn anyone. We don't believe in exclusivity. We don't believe in othering. That is what Hinduism, I believe, is, and that is why all of us sooner or later will be converted. That's another matter. To expose somebody's dark side, that person has to have a bright side. I was told some questions are off limits, but I've answered nonetheless. I hope that.
Good evening, sir. I'm really big fan of you, first of all, and thank you for being here. I have always seen you on podcasts and on different news channels. You talk about how India is a land of missed opportunities. Can you please throw some light on it? And another question I have in my mind, like we have seen multiculturalism is getting destructed in Europe, in most of the countries. So why don't these countries fail to cope up with multiculturalism, whereas India is a good example of it? So.
Well, is India a good example of it? I don't know. What is multiculturalism? As I said, is it multiculturalism when you have predatory religions out to destroy you, your way of life? Would you want to live in a society where one set of people are constantly prying on you to convert you, to tell you that what you are following is wrong, come to our fold, this is, we will give you these incentives, we will do this. At all times, if you are being exclusivist, if you're othering, if you're cancelling, if you're castigating, if you're denigrating the other group of people, how it is multiculturalism? It might be multicultural in that it is two cultures, but it is a clash of cultures. And a society that has a clash of cultures cannot survive as that. Sooner or later, the culture that is clashing is the one that will supersede others. And we've seen it. We've seen democracy shifts because of this issue of multiculturalism, as somebody says, I don't know who said it, that to a tolerant society sooner or later becomes intolerant by virtue of the fact that it is accepting intolerance. That's a very true statement.
So about India's land of missed opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. And I said, I do a show of hands here and I ask people that How many of you believe that India is a land of opportunities? And how many of you believe India is a land of opportunities? Right? Almost all hands have gone up. All of you love India, including me. So the next question is, how many of you believe India is a land of missed opportunities? As many hands gone up. So you're not nationalists, you're patriots. That proves it. And let me give you one example of this. Do we have time for this?
Sir, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you. Yeah. Because I think this is important and this illustrates this. What I mean by opportunities and missed opportunities. India had an amazing opportunity. I say it scientifically, not in a way in a very mala fide sense at all, when COVID struck. Because we were supposed to be the world hub of vaccines. All of us know this, right? And we thought we were. So on January 12th, 2020, China made public the genome sequence of SARS-CoV-2. We are the world hub of vaccines. On 13th Jan, 24 hours later, Moderna had applied for phase 1 clinical trials of their vaccine. They made a vaccine in 24 hours. Okay. Within 2 weeks, Australia and CDC Atlanta cultured the virus, which is most important if you want to inactivate the virus and make that as a vaccine. It took us till June for the government, us, World Hub, to culture the virus and give it to Bharat Biotech to inactivate it using beta-propionactone, chemical inactivation, and to make the vaccine. A World Hub delayed getting a vaccine preparatory stages by 3 to 4 months. Is that not a missed opportunity? And it didn't dawn us then because all of us have seen the vaccine development one way or the other. Even if we are not scientists, we know that a vaccine coming to the market takes 6 to 7 to 10 years. You know, rotavirus vaccine, even with 50% efficacy, took about 10 years to come to the market. But here, 10 years, everything would have gone. We needed it like that. And the time hit us during the Delta wave the next year, when each person not vaccinated meant 1 oxygen cylinder less. Millions could have been saved had we made those vaccines or made those vaccines available 3 months earlier than we did. Which head rolled? None. Who is accountable? That is a missed opportunity. We had an opportunity, And it's not just that Covishield that is based on the adenovirus system. We were unaware of it and Oxford scientists knew. We were working on these vaccines before. For rabies, these technologies are 10 years old, decades old. But we missed the bus. Likewise, for example, I don't know how many of us know that, okay, this is very interesting. Just give me a couple of minutes, plus 30 seconds extra. Liberalization saved us. As somebody said, it is one of the most prominent policies that have economic liberalization to saved us. And 3-4 years ago, I think ICMR brought out very revealing pie charts, about the nature of diseases that afflicted Indians in 1990 on the cusp of economic liberalization and now. And it's so revealing because in 1990, 70% of the diseases that afflicted Indians were communicable diseases. 30% were non-communicable diseases. And it is understandable because we're a poor country, we didn't have good sanitation. Right now we have 120 million toilets, 110 million water tap connections, 330 I can rattle off. But the point is 30 years ago, those were the communicable diseases that were afflicting us because of our poverty. 30% were heart diseases, asthma, diabetes, 30 years later, with economic prosperity, with wealth creation, the chart has completely flipped. Now 70% of Indians are afflicted with non-communicable diseases, asthma, diabetes, heart ailments. 30% have communicable diseases. And going forward, using genetic technique, CRISPR, and so many other advances, we might end communicable diseases altogether. In fact, Narendra Modi has kept the target of eradicating tuberculosis to 2025. Obviously, that will never happen. Politicians always set targets, never meet them. Scientists always meet targets, never set them. But be that as it may, we know that going forward with more and more prosperity, what is going to hit us like a tsunami are the non-communicable diseases. And let me give you one example. We have the highest incidence of cancer that we've ever had in our last 75 years, in the last 2 years. Heart ailments, diabetes. There was a Lancet report 3 months ago of a 10-year survey. Did you know 150 million Indians are pre-diabetic right now? 100 million Indians are confirmed diabetics. That's more than the population of Germany. It is a catastrophe. Are we prepared for it? No, we are not. Where is the anti-diabetes drug that we have made in India? And for that, I want a show of hands. How many of you know who Lakshmi Kutti is? Okay, not a single hand has gone up. Okay. 3 years ago, I would have been like the audience. Even I did not know who Lakshmi Kutti is. Let me tell you who Lakshmi Kutti is. Lakshmi Kutti is an 85-year-old frail woman. All her life, she has spent in the forests, deep jungles of Western Ghat. She has a cornucopia of a library of medicinal plants, 500 medicinal plants. She's been treating tribals with that. Lakshmi Kutti got the Padma Shri 4 years ago. That is how I got to know of Lakshmi Kutti. She came bare feet, she stayed in Rashtrapati Bhavan, and she went away after 3 days. She said, I'm not used to this thing. My life, my whole calling is in the forest. She returned to the forest. Lakshmi Kutti has 500 medicinal plants. We should have, by now, 100 Lakshmi Kutti institutes of natural products, taking those medicinal plants, finding out the active molecule ingredient in each one of those. Who knows? We would have already come up with a $1 trillion selling anti-diabetes drug, anti-heart ailment, anti-asthma. But you know what will happen? A Nordic lab or some science institute in UK or Germany will come down, descend down to the Western Ghats, will meet Lakshmi Kutti, take her cornucopia of 500 medicinal plants, go back to Sweden, discover the active ingredient, the super drug that will cure diabetes. They will get a Nobel Prize. And at the Nobel Prize ceremony, they will thank Lakshmi Kutti. And we'll be so chuffed with it. We'll say, oh, wow, let her give us, let us give us a Padma, let her give her a Padma Bhushan. She deserves that. Or if, God forbid, if she is no longer there, we'll give her a posthumous Bharat Ratna. This is the situation. Is this not missed opportunity? And if you believe this is a figment of my imagination, let me take another show of hands. How many of you know who 2UU is? Again, not a single hand has gone up. Likewise, I would have also not raised my hand because I did not know a year ago who 2UU was. 2UU, just like Lakshmi Kutti, is an 80-year-old frail Chinese woman. Just like Lakshmi Kutti, she spent most of her life in a forest in China. But unlike Lakshmi Kutti, she has a library of medicinal plants. She isolated the active ingredient of one of those medicinal plants, artemisinin. 2UU won the Nobel Prize 4 years ago. And that artemisinin is the only viable malaria curing drug because now there is widespread resistance to chloroquine. This is what is missed opportunity. We should be not just honoring Lakshmi Kutti, we should be honoring her work. And the best way to honor her work is to take that forward. Where are the Adanis and Ambanis who could make those hundreds of Lakshmi Kutti institutes and then reap the billions of dollars that will come later on? Artemisinin alone has tens of billions of sales every year. But you require that foresight to not constantly harp us as a land of opportunity, but to realize that yes, this is a land of missed opportunity. Thank you. The undergraduate from JNU would like to. So what is scientifically wrong cannot be said to be scientifically right by anybody else. I mean, logic and rationale, if he was saying something that was not scientifically proven, that would have put a lot of people's lives in danger. It's wrong. So be it Ramdev or be it anybody else, selling anything. And I've said this before, it is as much true of some aspects of Ayurveda. It's not that Ayurveda per se should be junked. Ayurveda is absolutely brilliant field. Ayurveda has given us so many medicines. I'm talking of, so many medicines, natural products that have been isolated from plants. Erstwhile, I myself have been lucky enough to be working in one of those fields where, one of the active ingredient of a leaf turned out to be very potent anti-tubercular in its activity. So you can't junk the entire field. But what is wrong scientifically is wrong. And you cannot put people's lives in danger by promoting something that has not been proven right.
As we conclude the fireside chat, we express our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, as well as the modern.
I have been asked a lot of questions. If you permit me, I could ask one question.
Yes, sir, sure. Please. Go ahead.
Would I be called again?
Yes. I kindly request the students heads of the EML, Mahesh and Arjav, to present Dr. Anand Ranganathan with a memento as a token of appreciation from our side.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for coming. Refreshments are outside. Please take it and go.